Hello, welcome to another video from the fanpub.com. I've got Sean with me again.
Yeah, good to be back, Al.
This is from our series of videos that we're telling you how to play different leagues and how they differ from each other. This time we're talking about Dynasty leagues.
It's how I cut my teeth, yeah. It's the first thing I ever got involved in is Dynasty. I played one Dynasty league for full 15 years. I loved it. I collected all the data from it. I collected all the bits of paper that you could from it. It was all done by post.
This is how old Sean is. They used to do it by play by mail.
Play by mail, and you had to get your orders in on time. You had to make sure your orders in early in the week. I won't go into bore you with details, but if you missed the deadline, you'd had it. And if the Royal Mail went on strike, it was an absolute nightmare. It used to be fraught with danger. Dynasty leagues, trades wouldn't go through because of things like the Royal Mail going on strike. But it was a lot of fun. That was in those days. What is Dynasty? Well, effectively, there's two types. You either start a brand new league and everybody gets to bid on all the players. That's one form of Dynasty, which we'll talk on in a minute.
So how do the values in Dynasty change from the values in, say, Standard and Redraft? Which players are more valuable? Who would you target?
Well, you generally, what you're doing in Dynasty is you're building ahead. I inherited a team. My first ever Dynasty was somebody else's vision, and I inherited his team, and I had to decide which players out of his team I liked.
Was this a vision Stevie Wonder, or was it an alright team?
It was a bad team.
He didn't have great vision.
It had very poor... For me, it wasn't what I was looking for at all. And I didn't really understand fantasy even then, but I knew enough to work out that this wasn't a good team. And the reason I knew it wasn't good is that no one liked these players even when they were cut. So you knew you were onto something bad. So what you do in Dynasty is you've got to make decisions of your players. Which ones are going to be your long-term future? Which ones are going to be players you might use to try and poach another player? Which players you might just drop because they don't really have any intrinsic value? But in Dynasty, you're building for the long term. In my case, I knew my first year was going to be terrible, but I knew I was building for the year after. So you have to kind of work out what you want to do. So there's a bit more complex. A lot of Dynasty leagues have unique rules and unique ways of looking at it.
Yeah, so a Dynasty league actually goes on for a number of seasons. So you literally, if your team isn't much good this year, or you don't think it can challenge you, build for future years, like Sean just said.
But once you get good,
because the squad you end in from one season,
yeah,
you actually have for the whole of the next season. So you've got to think carefully about who you want to keep.
The only difference is when you come into the next year in Dynasty, the thing that comes up for grabs generally, there will be free agents out there that would have been dropped, but generally what actually ends up happening is there is a depending on the league, there's different ways it's done, but there will be a rookie draft, a mini rookie draft.
And normally the poorer teams are rewarded with the best, the
best
choice
picks, the first choices. Yeah,
all the best.
A bit like the NFL. If you finish last in the NFL, then you tend to get the first pick in the draft. It's a similar sort of thing in most Dynasty leagues. In the one that I cut my teeth on, that wasn't the case. I won't go into that in here, but it was much more.
But
much
normally
more difficult.
That is the case,
yeah, very much so, and it's fairer.
So. Mostly in Dynasty leagues, you'd see wide receivers being targeted a lot because they have the longevity of wide receivers is
less contact. You learn this as you go along. There's less wide receivers generally. A running back will have maybe 250, 200, 300 carries. That's a lot of contact. You're going to take a lot of hits. They
wear down quick.
Whereas a wide receiver, he might get 90 catches, but he might only get hit 70, 60 times throughout the whole of the season. Really, there may be some hand fighting on the line maybe, but that's minor compared to what a running back will put up with. So that's why they last longer, and also why they tend to have a lot of vanity in Dynasty and last a number of years. And you are building for the future, so you're always trying to build like a school of running backs or wide receivers on your bench, and your bench plays a huge part in it. There's all sorts of rules around, can you hold an injured player? In Dynasty you hold injured players much longer than any other format because
even like people like Josh Gordon, who
he was
might come back at some stage.
Well, he was held in. Some people have held Josh Gordon for nearly 2 years now in Dynasty leagues, hoping for the return of Josh Gordon. I think that has truly flown, but that's what makes Dynasty so interesting, because if players return from a bad injury and you happen to have them,
it's like when Jordy Nelson went down for a year. You don't drop him; you've just got to put him on your bench.
Some people did, some people panic,
and you pick him up.
And they panic a bit quicker in Dynasty sometimes. Some people are much more. It's a long-term game, so you don't have to make instant snap decisions. One thing about Dynasty it teaches you is patience. You can afford to play the long game. You can afford to take risks. There is kind of two ways to look at it. I can talk with some clarity on this. In the league I inherited, I knew it was the long game. I have to wait. It's going to be a couple of years before I'm relevant. But once I've got a good team, I'm going to try and hold that team as long as possible, make myself as good as possible. And in one of the more recent Dynasty leagues I've joined, which is yours, the Kraken, I think I've got a very good team to start with. So the truth of it is I'm trying to build pieces onto that team for the long term to hold how good it is for as long as possible till the wheels come off and I get 3 or 4 injuries, and which happens, and then it all falls apart.
So you've got to weigh up between what you think a player's skill is and their age, maybe how long they're going to last. So it's a bit of a balancing act.
Very much. Age plays a big part, because you're absolutely highlighting the right thing. When people are making trades in Dynasty, if you say, for example, somebody wants to trade you Brandon Marshall as a good example, obviously he's 30. So you've got to weigh up how many more years you think he's going to give you. He's just moved to the Giants. Is he going to be worth 1 or 2? Probably. So there's a value to him, but it's weighing up whether what the value is and what you're prepared to give away.
It'd be a lot lower than it would be in a standard.
Yeah, standard league.
Same with people like Marshall and Lynch.
Yeah, standard, you've got 1 year, so his value is high. In Dynasty, the value, you look at the long term, is not a lot there for him, so you shouldn't give up a lot. But that's how you have to weigh it up.
But again, like everything, you can find cheat sheets. We talked about Fantasy Pros in the other videos.
Well, we love giving out Dynasty
there's
advice.
Dynasty rankings on there. We do Dynasty. We do.
I think I've been the thing about Dynasty that's really good is what I like Dynasty. And it's one of the things I hope we get a lot of questions on this. Is I really love fielding Dynasty questions, because that's where I cut my teeth. So I'm really good at knowing when to hold them, fold them. That's my strength. Yours is very good. You were very good on auction the other night. Mine's in Dynasty is knowing how to squeeze the value out of the players as much as possible, and knowing when to pick someone up or when to hold them.
So a lot of it is timing, isn't it?
Very much timing, and also it's being clever. For example, we could see last year, we gave out some advice. I like the metrics coming out about Mike Gillisley and Rex Burkhead, and I said, wow, if you can trade for them now, this is long before they got, ended up in New England, trade for them. Because those guys, they're going to fall. Something's going to happen good for these boys. And they both went to New England. I was like, oh my God, that was a really good bit of Dynasty advice. So suddenly now you got a potential starter and you got the backup. That's pretty huge. And those kind of things can make a big difference in Dynasty.
Yeah, so players moving teams, you've got to remember, if they're in the last year of a contract, they're possibly going to move and get an opportunity.
Yeah, very much so. So there's loads to weigh up. Dynasty is a bit more complex. So I would always advise people, you cut your teeth on standard. So have a look at our standard video first. Move into sort of PPR and have a start tweak. They're a bit more complex, and then eventually have a look at a Dynasty League, because the thing about Dynasty that's nice is going to be played over a few years. Best Dynasty leagues always have a defined end date.
Yeah, I think the one thing you can do is a rookie mistake. You draft too many old players.
Yeah,
you think Marshall and she's brilliant, but you've got to think about it long term.
Yeah, there's one thing. I mean, you don't mind a few. Like I always say, if you've got a squad of 20, 2 or 3 is fine. It's 10 or just over 10%.
So it's about, like you say, it's a balancing act, isn't it?
But any more than 10%, so if you ended up with, say you had 6 players, you had 20% of your squad or so, 40% almost, made up of veterans, in a year down the line, you're going to have a problem. You're going to have a big hole, you're going to have to try and fill it with players who are unknown, untested, and probably really deep down in the rookie lists. Sure, one might break out, and that's great. But if none do, you've still got that gap to fill, and it becomes harder and harder as each year players get older. So it's a real balance.
But it's great fun. Definitely recommend doing it. If you've got any questions, you leave them on the video. So we're happy to ask them, whether it's players, whether it's about a Dynasty League.
And never forget, subscribe, like, comment and share, because we need those.
Thanks very much for listening.